concept of power knowledge, Foucault holds that the two base terms are inexorably linked. That is to say, by knowing things, one may in effect obtain a measure of control over them. This, he argued, was the reason why people seek to define and understand the specific natures and mechanisms of the varying principles and form of power in the first place, namely, the institutions which govern our everyday lives. By comprehending the mechanisms of such things as the man or the establishment, human beings, seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of the world, may gain a form of agency over them. Of course, this is not an altogether revolutionary conception, nor is it unique to Foucault himself, although Foucault is very much speaking of and conceptualizing power as a secular force of the world we inhabit, and makes little if any mention of a deity. In fact, his ideals have very strong roots in historical religious traditions. Such thinking may in fact be traced back to a 5th century branch of Neo-Platonists who followed the work of a man known as Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite. These Neo-Platonists, who were philosophers as much as theologians, sought to learn about the inner workings of the cosmos and were notable for their belief in a supreme, super-essential entity known as the Godhead. In their own theory of how to learn the universe, they held fast to a belief in the power of words. Words, they argued, were a direct and holy emanation from this Godhead's mind to those of humans, and were the mode by which people could realize things. As such, if these words were indeed sacred incarnations, then by knowing them, one could in essence capture the nature, or perhaps even the soul, of that which the word named. This belief applied even to the Godhead itself, which was by nature that which was beyond knowing and beyond controlling. To name, understand, or incarnate the Godhead was considered impossible, and to attempt to do any of them was considered a sin. This strain of thought persists throughout many cultures and religions even today, many of which are by tradition not allowed to refer to God by name. In Judaism, for instance, practitioners are encouraged to use circumlocution rather than to verbally speak the name of God, Yahweh. As this form of thinking developed throughout the ages, there also arose simultaneously the tradition that Foucault belongs to and partly describes, which, while it might be inaccurate to refer to as a tradition that deals with the tangible, can be seen as an alternative to the Neoplatonist mystics, for it deals with the less spiritual mechanics of the universe. Although Foucault primarily focused upon power through human relations and associations, such as world organizations, the military-industrial complex, or even the everyday interactions between people, his secular idea of power knowledge can be expanded to take in the pursuit of knowledge of the natural world, the methodic and systematic collection and study of information on how the universe functions. In a word, science. Among these two spheres, which are primarily intellectual and religious, it is interesting to note that several of the beliefs in both mirror aspects found in what might be regarded as a third, perhaps middle ground sphere, which is the paranoid style itself. For instance, the so-called divine rays that Judge Daniel Schreber professed to experience, and their relation to the grand conspiracy he feared, can in many regards be seen as a direct link between the religious beliefs of the Neoplatonists and their holy emanations of knowledge with Foucault's secular conceptualization of the forms which authority and power take within our lives, wherein knowledge is a force of potency in and of itself. Furthermore, the paranoid style is by definition a style which by preternatural, near godlike qualities are confirmed upon a more worldly force, such as the government, and legitimate authority becomes nearly mythical in strength, and interestingly in its own capacity for attaining knowledge. Another link may be seen in the goals of the various ideologies. While the religious tradition seeks not truly to understand power, the academic tradition, as exemplified by Foucault and his secular kin, seeks to understand as much of the inner workings of the universe as possible, a power rooted in the material world. With an understanding of physics in hand, man mapped heavens, split the atom, walked on the moon, and found ways to transmit information across vast swaths of space. In this way, the paranoid style itself may be seen to blend the two approaches, as it seeks to gather evidence and use rationality to understand the universe. Doing so, he or she may thereby gain a form of agency over power, be it earthly things such as the government, or various ethnic groups, or some other controlling force of marginalization in the universe. Yet at the same time, absolute enlightenment is accepted by the paranoid to be impossible, as the power in question is also paradoxically a power that functions as though on an otherworldly plane of existence and may never be more than glimpsed, if that. Power in the paranoid ideal is always beyond full comprehension, and even if the paranoid could get close to the true power, then like Icarus nearing the sun, the paranoid's wings would melt away, leaving him or her to plunge into the sea. With this in mind, we can thus begin to regard the paranoid style as a subtle deterioration of the perhaps tenuous wall which separates the known from the unknown, the material from the spiritual, the realistic from the fantastic.